Hello, my name is Chris Snipes, and you are listening to The Melt. Sometimes in this world, we come across things that absolutely defy all explanation. Things that fall outside of the realm of precise definitions. Things that can't be repeated in laboratories or measured with instruments. Things that, to some, feel almost realer than real. Yet, in this society of materialist reductionism, to have experiences that occur outside of this worldview can have us questioning our own sanity, because there's no place for such experiences within a mindset that only gives legitimacy to that which can be repeated and quantified. Yet the world is filled with these sorts of experiences, and there are people who have been reporting back from these realms for thousands of years. Yet somehow, contemporary science thinks that it can arrogantly step in and declare it all nonsense. Like it's some self-concocted delusion of societies that actually have more of a connection to their greater universal context than to self-serving egoic pursuits that only serve to address immediate gratification, acquiring more stuff, maintaining power structures which serve the few, and, most importantly, promoting the worldview that the universe is some random accident that contains no inherent meaning in and of itself, therefore designating the role of all of us as being victims of our circumstances. What the fuck meaning are we supposed to harvest from that situation? I don't think that bait and switch was accidental, and at The Melt, I'm here to attempt to map this territory that some say isn't on any map. I'll be talking with people who have experienced these realms, people who have written about these realms, and people who study these realms. And today's guest is Kai Muegge, a physical medium from Frankfurt, Germany, who has been starting his own seance group since he was 15 years old. He and his wife Julia conduct seances all over the world that harken back to the spiritualist movement of the mid-1800s in the United States. They involved objects manifesting out of thin air, tables rising off of the floor, and the excretion of ectoplasm, a mysterious substance that is said to exist somewhere between the spiritual and the physical. Here, I start off the interview by asking Kai if he could attempt to explain what the difference is between a physical medium and other sorts of mediums.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to try to. A physical medium is building. Trying to build portals together with sitters in a sitters group situation. Energetically, something can be erected there that enables intelligent potentials to come through physically. Or I try to say it easier. Usually you are encountering mental mediums. They are doing usually work with deceased spirits. The realm of the spirit world is, of course, much huger than the world of the deceased spirits or spirits of the deceased. But today, usually a mental medium is working with the spirits of the deceased. So usually you're seeing mediums, or you're meeting mediums who are standing on a platform or in a Sunday service at a spiritual church, for example, and they are giving messages from deceased relatives and friends and so forth. And what may be a message in their service is a touch in ours, or a kiss, or even an apparition, or something like that.
Mm-hmm. But there are a variety of different ways that you can manifest things physically, right? Like ectoplasm, you can actually produce objects. What are some of the different ways that manifests?
Indeed, there is a well-known wide range of opportunities the spirits use to come through. They manifest, or they materialize to different degrees, and you are right, they may materialize objects or apport objects. The word apport is also, there's a different, actually. An apported object is an object that was before at another location and is brought into the experimental room and is then rematerialized there. And the classic materialization has before only existed in a thought form, so to speak. Yes. So the apported object has existed before, and the materialized object is created from an idea, actually. Yes. Good. So yes, the history of the human beings dealings with the supernatural is the history of its manifestation to different degrees, and these forms, and also, yes, these ways and forms of materialization are well known, and they happen in our experimental sessions, indeed.
So, how does one go about becoming a medium? I mean, did you just kind of discover this when you were a child? Did somebody teach you as a mentor, or did you develop it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I had an initiation like experience when I was a child, or actually I had several. Actually, I had my whole childhood was an initiation, because I was a natural out of body experiencer, and I had to deal with that in a teacher's household quite alone. And the things that happened to me over the years, up to that moment when I then finally encountered or learned, or had to learn because I became a witness, how the spirit world is able to manifest physically in our three-dimensional world as well. And when I had to learn this, when I had to observe and witness this, because I observed it in a grave poltergeist disturbance case that happened in the household of my best school comrades, and all that did not happen coincidentally. I believe that was a path for me to encounter when I was 12 years old, to learn that is makeable, or that the spirit world is capable to manifest that way. And that changed everything. And 3 years later, when I was 15, the first sitters group I erected. And since then, my life was mainly happening in dark cellars or darkened rooms.
Yeah, but you also have said too that anybody can learn this, right? These are skills that anybody can develop.
Oh, I am absolutely persuaded that that is a kind of archetype that is living inside of us, and that actually everybody can um, can build up the scenario that I was building up, and this is something what we try to teach as well. This is part of our mission, so to speak, not only to demonstrate what is makeable, but also to give the people the methods at hand to have this magical forms of expanding their own or my own reality. We want to give that people at hand, because to converse with the spirit world in that physical form is an absolutely magical thing. And may your life look gray and repetitive. I can promise you, when you have 2 or 3 or 4 friends and you use the techniques which are well known and which we teach, they are basically well known. They are a little bit. They went a little bit lost, unfortunately, but basically, even in the age of modern spiritualism was actually founded on the physical phenomena. Only over the years they seemed to go lost, but actually they didn't. Behind the scenes, they were always very alive and active. And yeah, it was because science couldn't deal quite well with it. Because of the techniques, because of the conditions in which they have to happen. And that led to a lot of ridicule and led to a lot of allegations and so forth. And the people and the mediums, they did not want to be charged with fraud allegations, or they did not want to become ridiculed anymore. And so they only acted. They went back into their home circles and closed the doors for the public. Yes, and in the 1990s, all came back with the Skoll Group and with the Skoll Report of the SPR. And that was the revival of physical mediumship within spiritualism. Physical mediumship still has a hard time, also because modern spiritualism has become a market, an economical market, and very hard economical interests are defended here, and they are not quite interested in a new form of mediumship that has to offer something, truly something, because this physical way of dealing with things that can not actually discussed away, it at least has to be discussed, and that attracts a lot of interest. Yes, if you believe in it or not, you at least want to have a look at it. And so mental mediumship is not very happy, so to speak, with physical mediumship coming back up.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I mean, it's maybe it is a war. No, it's not a war.
A psychic battle.
Yes, exactly.
So did this sort of the physical mediumship begin around the spiritualist movement around like the late middle 1800s? Is that the origination?
Yes, 1850, 1848, in the house in Rochester, they had these knocking sounds, these famous raps, when the spirits rap in the walls and in the ceilings. Yes, and there was a case that went over the country up and down because it took so long and until they had discovered what was going on, and that was so very well covered by the press. Of course, had its reasons as well, because a lot of philosophical forethinkers were or had prepared the society at that time to receive these phenomena in that very open way.
Mm-hmm.
And so this Rochester rappings, as they are called, They were very well perceived. And yes, actually, these rappings started it, and the three sisters who learned to deal with them by knocking back. And
The Fox sisters?
the Fox sisters, exactly. And interestingly, within 2 years, all three of them became professional mediums, traveling up and down the country and demonstrating that they can talk to the spirits. Because, you know, in the house in Rochester, um, a homeless man rapped. He was killed at the door of a former tenant of the house, and he was digged in the. He was killed, and he laid in the cellar under the earth, and they had to dig him up, and he wanted to be digged up. He wanted to have a regular, I don't know what the English word is. What is the English word when you want to have at the cemetery a regular,
Like a burial service,
yeah,
like
a
a
burial,
ceremony?
yeah, exactly, a burial service. And for the press, when that was discovered, and they actually digged the bones out of the ground in the cellar for the press. The case was actually more or less over, at least in regards to the Rochester raps. But what only a few people do know is that the raps didn't stop in the household. No, in the contrary, they became more and more active. But now, not a homeless man was anymore rapping. Now spirits were rapping and addressing the three girls and telling them that they are the spearheads of a new movement, a spiritual movement as huge as we have never seen it before. And that they had to leave the house and travel around and show everybody that no matter where they would go, they would receive these reps from now on. And that happened. And they went everywhere, and in town halls and so forth. They were sitting on the stage, and the reps started, and they unfolded the conversation in a yes and no manner. One rep for yes, two for no, but of course also an alphabetical rapping thing was also used. So names were rapped, and yeah, the people in the audience were impressed because uh, their names, respectively, the names of their relatives were coming up and so forth. Yes, and that started it all. And within months and years, it began with a few hundreds, then a few thousands, and then for sure more than 10 or more thousand mediums um, emerged.
What do you think happened in the 1990s that sort of brought it all back?
Yeah. What happened then, or what brought it back? You asking?
Yeah, why do you think it chose that moment to sort of resurface?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, technically, it was the report, the Skoll report of the SPR, and for years, no, for decades, physical mediumship was not really addressed anymore by influential societies like the SPR. So for many, that was probably very surprising that the SPR was coming up with such a detailed report about physical phenomena in an experimental group in Scole, England. But the phenomena were so striking. And actually, Robin Foy, he had written at least one book Yes, one book. He has written already in the 80s, I believe, or the early 90s. It was called In Pursuit of Physical Mediumship. And that book was revealing how much was already going on over the years previously to the Skull Report, behind the scenes and in the home circles, and that there actually was a true home circle movement going on in England, actually, home circles around physical phenomena.
Interesting.
So technically, it was a Skull Report. Because 1850, we believe it was not actually the spirit of a homeless man that triggered all this. We believe it was the age and the condition of the Western world, and that the spirits actually were addressing the Western Hemisphere, so to speak, with the question, don't you want to have us with us when you move into materialism and all these dark things that will come up in the upcoming ages? And we can really regard us as lucky that that happened, because, conversing with the spirits, we are doing for thousands of years, and they were so imminent in regards to the metaphysical development or evolution of the human mind. So it's part of us. Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe everybody has a mediumship, or the forms of abilities to converse with the spirits. If you can bring it so far as I have brought it, because I 35 years concentrated onto this, and this is my advantage, that really 35 years, all my activities were circling around physical phenomena and the techniques, how they can be erected, controlled, and focused, and strengthened. But basically, I believe, because we see this when we install new experimental groups, and we have installed a lot of them all over the world, nearly everywhere where we have been, people were so fascinated that at least one group within out of the guests that visited us, at least one group has formed. And I know they all had their exciting times and amazing times in their experimental efforts. And unfortunately, meanwhile, social groups usually always tend to break down early. Unfortunately, specifically social groups that circle around these high energies, and it seems as if they tended specifically to break down early. So not all of them did survive, but those who have survived have developed quite astounding things, up to full ectoplasmic mediumships. Yes. I've, I've, I've seen a lot of photos, and I have encountered a lot of them, but unfortunately, none of them are interested in any form of public reflection or public disclosure about what they are doing. So I am still waiting for more physical mediums who like to inspire others the way we are trying to do it.
So that's very conscious for you. You want to you want to put it out front and you invite people in to experience it because you think that people should know about this stuff.
Absolutely. And it is mind expanding. It is expanding everything what you know, basically, about reality and about consciousness and how reality and consciousness do function or interfunction. So yes, absolutely, yes.
Do you choose the way that you converse with the spirits, or do they sort of tell you how they want to converse? Like, did you set out to start dealing with ectoplasm, or did it just show up one day?
Yes. You know, because you are part of the spirit world, the things that do interest you the most, um, that is reflected by the work of the spirits that encounter you, you know. So I was actually very, very much interested in the highest forms of physical phenomena of the heydays of spiritualism, but I had not the direct opportunity to somehow put it on a wish list or something. I only had it strongly in mind, of course, and then spirit communicators exchanged, and um, suddenly there was one who brought us all these powerful developments. And that was this Hans Bender. He's still working with us. And he claims to be a former, very in Germany, famous parapsychologist. And that's why he is so strict in regards to medium control, for example. But actually, it was him. But in a union, actually, with in Germany, the most well-known names in regards to the heydays of spiritualism. So in this spirit team, there is a spirit team, actually, Chris. We call it spirit team. And Hans Bender is actually only the one who communicates. But in the background, there is Rudi Schneider, who was a powerful Austrian physical medium. And in the seances, Rudi Schneider is responsible for the classical physical phenomena. In the background, in the spirit team, there is as well Albert Freiherr of Schrenk-Notzing. He is the famous author of the book Phenomena of Materialization, which is a massive standard book about materialization phenomena. 500 pages. His work with Eva Carrière was her name, and Stanislava Stanislava P or T, I don't know, because her second name is not revealed. And this is until today, actually, it is regarded as a standard work in parapsychology because of the methods he was using. And so we have in the background these famous figures. There are more, by the way, but these are only two examples that reflect the heydays of spiritualism and connection to the classical physical phenomena. And there is another personality who is, for example, responsible for higher forms of physical phenomena, like illumination phenomena. So spirit lights. It is called, or higher forms like full phantom materialization, when full phantoms occur and appear. So actually, these figures, these personalities, they fully reflect my own amazement and involvement uh, into the age of spiritualism. And yes, and that's usual when you deal with the spirit world. Many of the things you put into, you get out of it in the end as well. So it's a powerful interconnection that is happening here.
Nice, nice. Let's go through a few things that happen during these seances. Like ectoplasm has been referred to, but some people, I've been fascinated with this stuff since I was in junior high school. I just, there was a period in the day where I would volunteer at the library, and what I would do is I would sit at a desk, check people's hall passes in going in and out, back and forth to their classes. And in the meantime, I would just pour through the metaphysical section of the library and just read every single bit that I could. I just sucked it up. And so I know what ectoplasm and all this stuff is. I've never talked to anybody who actually deals with it. So how how would you describe this strange substance called ectoplasm?
Yeah. Basically, we can say that ectoplasm is a form of materia that occurs when we open that confinement, that seance room actually that is hermetically closed, in which are 20 people at least, who are all, at least 20 people who are all focused on the erection of these, let's call it portals, because they suddenly they appear, so let's call it portals how they appear. So we have a confinement, we have that hermetically closed up room. We have a lot of people who are all in an altered state of mind because they had prepared themselves. They are amazed, and all this leads, when that is then finally or in the end altogether catalyzed through a medium, that leads like to to a to a change of the physical laws, basically. And it is as if a new form of materia is coming up that is representing both worlds that seem to emerge here together, or melt, or intermelt, or melt together, so to speak. And it represents in its characteristics both worlds. It has the physicality of our world, but it is like a highly tuned receiver of spiritual or informal content. So what things have in mind, what they do remember, what they transport in their hearts when they have a strong draw to somebody who is already in the spirit world, that this fine receiver is somehow receiving these contents and is reflecting them, or is bringing it through, or is realizing the contact that is then made. And let's use the example that the faces of the deceased occur. So where do they come from? Do they come from the minds of the sitters, or are they coming from locations in the spirit realm? Anyway, in regards to ectoplasm, it represents exactly that. So I would say it is an experimental form of, or a temporarily form of materia that happens in the seance room in that very, very special moment when all the conditions fall into the right places. And um, this brings up, this brings it up. Yes.
Yeah. And where does it go afterwards? Does it go back to from whence it came? Does it go back inside of the medium?
That's not what we actually experience. Um, we experience that the moment the spirit controls to retreat the let's say the building or the architectonical information out of it, it it falls. It disintegrates. It disintegrates simply. So they retreat the information out of it, and then there is only the compounds of it, and this is usually compounds from the sitters and from the medium's body, mostly liquid. And we find that liquid then on the floor or on the cloths of the medium. So we do not actually, because in our seances we see huge strands leaving the mouth of the medium like a snake, actually, but not at all. It is removing into the body of the medium. No, this is not what we do experience, but I know that with other mediums, it actually seems to be the case in their seances, but not in ours.
And how aware are you during a seance when things are reporting and when you're dealing with ectoplasm? And are you, I mean, I guess I could picture somebody going sort of into a trance and then something taking over and manifesting all of this stuff. Are you right there with everybody, with the sitters too?
We use different grades of trance involvement. And in seances, when you see ectoplasm, usually an actual deep trance condition is installed. And that means that I have retreated into a virtual inner meditative room that is existing actually besides of me, out of me, besides of me. And when I have retreated into that room, when I take the last foot out of my body, and that's the moment when the guest spirit is sinking in with its soul matrix into my body. And when all this is actually happening and the spirit has actually sunken into your body, we are usually we are using the first words this spirit entity is speaking with my own mouth. We are using these words as hypnotical triggers for me, who I am in this virtualized outside room, to sleep, to fall into sleep. And this happens. And then this voice is actually speaking not only automatically, but in regards to my personality, it speaks totally independently and even unconsciously. So I am sleeping, I am falling into sleep, and from my perception, I reawake right away. Usually, sometimes I dream, or I believe I dream, and sometimes I see in these dreams sections I believe that could be the seance, but I'm not really sure if it is the seance. Usually I fall into that sleep, reawake right away or right after it, and 2.5 or 3 hours have gone, and the seance is over, and I have to deal with what has happened during the seance with my body. That is quite strange, and you actually have to reflect and meditate a lot about that if you want to have that happening that way. Do you really want to get unconscious in a room of 20 or 30 people you do not know? And do you really want that then things occur people may regard as even fraud, people who maybe actually believe it is fraud, even though we believe that what we are doing is so transparent and has such an obvious vibration of uprightness and honesty, that I always believe people cannot believe this is fraud, but some do believe it is fraud. So do you want that? Do you want to be unconscious in front of 30 people? And there's maybe even those who regard it as fraud and they call you a fraud then, even though you are not even conscious meanwhile that all is happening. So you have to reflect about that. And do you really want to do that? But we believe we have been given a mission by the spirits, and I'm 50 years of age now. How often are you overhanded a mission from the spirit world in your life? Yes, so
Exactly.
I only had that opportunity, and after my wife was also on my side, we said we make it. We cancel all our jobs and try it out. Let's try it out. Can we do it? Can we economically organize that? And that is now 7 years ago. And for 7 years now, we are actually traveling around the world and demonstrate everywhere what is makeable when these two worlds do interconnect in that very special form, and what an amazing thing then develops and occurs from this. And we are still on this mission.
That's incredible. I'm so glad to hear that. So when you have all these portals, speaking of vulnerability, when you have these portals open, I mean, how do you know what's going to come through that portal? How do you know it's not going to be something negative?
Oh yeah. We have learned, and that is a thing of experience actually. And when we look into the annals of spiritualism, then these negative spiritual things are usually not happening in the experimental space. Interestingly, we you read of possession and occupation, these negative forms, or poltergeist and all these things, but they do usually not emerge from the experimental approach. That is this how it is from the start. And then in our own experience, I can only say that we have been taught that there are powerful entities overlooking what we are doing, and that they only bring through entities that match the high frequency of vibration the human existence is actually swinging in, so to speak. Yes. So, we are beings. We are beings evolving out of love. The whole species is a species that is grounded, is founded on this high frequency, how in which a consciousness can be in. It's this condition of love. It's first emotional, psychological love, then it's bodily love. And out of that high state of consciousness, actually, even the embodiment of the human being is emerging from. So, and these very high, ancient beings that overlook the intercommunication, interdimensional communication we are in, they do only let through beings and communicators who match this vibration. That means no demons, no negative entities do appear in these seances.
For the more skeptical people out there that will be listening, I'm sure, what are some of the precautions that you guys take when you start a seance? Like, they go so far as to strip search you, and what all happens?
Yeah. Mm, you know, in the history of spiritualism, usually it is regarded as control, to control the medium, but um, I know it that we mediums, when I am in an unconscious state, I definitely want to know what happens with my body in these sessions. So I am the first in the row who want to make sure that the medium is fixed in its seat, and that at every single second of the seance, even in the most phenomenal stages, that it is known what the medium is doing, how is it moving, is it trembling, is it sweating, is it definitely in its chair. So I am following the German tradition of being held by two persons. And this is very good so, because there is a natural weakness in the bounding tradition for mediums. The English American tradition binds its mediums into chairs, but the physical phenomena do often even integrate the binding of the mediums. And that's led to, in the 20s and 30s, it was quite um, um, widely known that mediums can be freed from their bindings, and then they walk through the room and enact the will of the spirits themselves. At these times, it was called transfiguration, but some when during or on the development of it, it became tabooized that this freeing of the mediums does occur. And that led to a lot of misunderstandings and allegations and everything. So let's get back to our tradition of controlling. So two people are holding me during the seance, and these two people do additionally control their control, vice versa as well. So control person A is checking if control person B is actually holding the medium the way he or she should. Additionally, we are doing full strip searches that is down to the skin and has every fold a human body can have, is part of this. So strip search and strip search of my wife, who is usually part of the seance as well. You know, at places where we are demonstrating for, in the meantime, 7 years or so, like in Basel at the Basel Sea Association in Switzerland, we have done this strip search 4 years, the first 4 years, and there was never anything found. So in the meantime, we are doing strip searches there, not anymore. But at every location where we are for the first time, we need to show at least the host that we are not bringing anything into the seance room. So in front of the host or in front of a trust person, this down to the skin strip search is executed, and with hands up in the air, I am then entering the seance room, and I am not retreating during the phenomenal phases of the evening into the cabinet. No, I am sitting with the circle, in the circle, so to speak, and I am held from left and right. All 4 limbs are being held. So every leg, every arm is being held. Yes, and then the spirits enter, and we believe, and when they enter, these 2 control persons are more or less permanently informing the sitters during the darkness phases of the seance. You know, the seance starts in dark and moves into red light areas. But during the darkness phases or sections, these control persons are more or less permanently informing the sitters about the condition the medium is in. And, you know, things fly crazily through the room during these sessions, and these 2 persons are holding the medium, holding me during that time, and reporting to the others that I'm usually sitting quite still in my chair. Meanwhile, all that happens. So this is the control scheme, so to speak, for these seances.
And speaking of the cabinet, that's something that goes back to the early spiritualist movement too. Where did that tradition come from? What is that? What is the purpose of the cabinet?
Originally, they wanted to have a space in the room that is not polluted by human energy, so to speak, and that the spirit had this confined space where they can enrich psychic energy, so to speak, or spiritual energy, or etheric energy, and that's it actually. And in the English and American tradition, the mediums are bound into chairs, and the chairs are being put into the cabinets. The curtains are being closed, and then the sitters do sit down on their seats, into their seats, and the seance begins. And after the seance, lights are switched on. They open the curtains of the cabinet, and the medium is still sitting in the chair. The bindings are untouched. And I have seen demonstrations of spirits, how they, to demonstrate their ability to do that they took out the mediums out of that bindings and with seals and everything. And then the medium was theoretically enabled to move freely through the room. Nobody is detecting that when it happens. But that was in the heyday, so to speak, justified by the fact that the same spirits bring these mediums back into the binding, what physically usually cannot be done, and the seals are untouched, and that cannot be done as well. And I have seen the demonstration of spirits who were demonstrating it. The medium actually was not aware that such a demonstration is actually weakening strongly the control momentum, so to speak. It was thought as an impressing demonstration by the spirit powers, but in regards to control, that's difficult. And the Germans, they had recognized that very, very early, and they said, no, 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 no. We don't want to have our mediums bound and being put into that cabinet where everything can happen. We want to have all the time direct touch contact to them. And that is quite a thing. I mean, when you see what is happening in the seance room, so 3 meters away from the medium, for example, in front of an illuminated plate, different hand forms do emerge and appear. And everybody in the room they are sitting in a hand chain, hand in hand. No hand is free in that room. And the room is searched, the medium is searched, medium's wife is searched, everything is searched. But hand forms appear, big ones, small ones. Some make signs with their fingers. And the medium is held from left and right. And that is quite impressive for the sitters.
Yes.
When they have when they believe that what the controlling persons are reporting to them, when they believe them, yeah, we always have at least one totally independent person doing that control, meaning there's mostly the host himself is securing the medium in its chair. Yes, and because we believe the sitters should at least believe the host of the evening. So we believe it is for the darkness phases, because we cannot intrude into the darkness. I know in England there is a movement at the moment. It is called, how is it called? Because they want to have no physical seances in darkness. They want to have them in light, or at least in infrared.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not work. The occult, this word that describes super phenomenal phenomena, it is communicated in its semantics. Occult means, directly translated, that what comes from darkness. And it has to do something with the fact that our perception is stabilizing the build of our 3-dimensional world. And when we block or distort this perception, the 3-dimensional becomes unstable. And in this unstableness, the spirits manage to enter our space. And that means, and that was the reason why science do never became happy with physical mediumship, because that means that at least, so to speak, one corner in the room had to stay in darkness. And that was, and it is still for some not acceptable, because you can theorize something what may be going on there in this last darkened corner.
Sure.
But it is needed for the experiment. It is needed. And I can tell you, these people, I don't know the name of that movement, because these people are either not informed, or they do not want to have physical mediumship happen at all. And I strongly suspect that it is the last of it. Because this connection with darkness is so very well known, and to forbid darkness, you are forbidding physical mediumship in the end.
Sure, sure. Have they? So they've not had any success, I would imagine.
Oh yes, what I wanted to say is that I am observing this home circle scene for 30 years, and there were from time to time groups that came up and said, "We will be bringing everything into the light." And in these 30 years, not one group succeeded, and they really wanted. I mean that. Mm, light, I don't know how that movement is. It's not a movement. It is a kind of you know there was such an accident. There was a very well-known medium, and there was a group of skeptical observers, and they installed an infrared cam without the knowledge of the medium, and they filmed the medium. And this medium became actually freed out of its binds. It was in the end back into its binds, but nobody was interested in it anymore into this. Everybody screamed out fraud, and out of that thing, this movement, or this, I do not remember how it is called, but anyway, this is absolutely exaggerated, and is all what we know about physical mediumship is contradicting such an idea. So it is difficult, as as you see, but with the holding control, we believe we are on a very safe and transparent side.
Sure, sure, definitely. Well, I know that our time, excuse me, is sort of coming to a close, but I just want to ask you a few more things. Do any of these sorts of manifestations happen outside of the circle, like just spontaneously throughout your
Oh
life?
yes, oh
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
oh yes.
In
Yeah,
what sorts of ways?
and my wife could tell you, because many times she is witness. Many times it happens around her when I am not present at all. But it happens a lot around us when we are together, and it is more or less. It is a lot out of the full range of phenomena we are encountering in the seance. So we had together spontaneous light phenomena, lights that uh, whizzed through the room, or objects appeared in all sizes spontaneously and suddenly in midair. We saw the air, how it was like when you look on a street, when the asphalt is very hot, when the tar is very hot, this shimmering over the tar, and that happens in midair, and suddenly out of midair, this these things are falling, and very rarely you can see it. Usually it happens the moment when you are just not looking into the direction, and that has to do with what we were just talking about. But very, very rarely you just get the last glimpse of it. For example, we were both looking coincidentally, we stood in front of each other and we were talking, and suddenly or coincidentally, we both were looking up, and we saw the object under the ceiling suddenly appear, and it fell right in the midst, in between of us.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, really crazy. And then we do telekinetic experiments for many, many years. So moving objects by thought, miniature objects by thought.
Yeah, yeah.
and such things. So, as I said, my life is physical mediumship from morning to morning. Night is not existing.
Yes,
Sleep is not
exactly.
existing anymore.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by the what I've seen as the potential power of the mind to affect reality, physical and energetic. And so this fascinates me to no end. So thank you so much for
Oh,
sharing.
yeah, yeah, you're welcome.
And the last thing I'll ask, can a seance be affected by just the mindsets of the people that are sitting there? Is it a collaborative
Very,
effort?
very, very much one of the most important things we have learned over the years with the Felix Circle. The Felix Circle was the most influential circle of the many circles I had founded in my lifetime. And what we have learned there was that the condition the people are in, the enthusiasm of the people is strengthening the cells, or when the people are skeptical or very tired, the cells will be very tired and lame. And when the sitters are very much participating and full of enthusiasm and everything, this will be reflected by the spirit activity as well. But one thing I want to necessarily mention, um, that healing is something that usually needed to be addressed, because in the indigenous environments in which these physical forms of spirit intercommunication are happening usually over the last thousands of years, healing was usually standing in the focus of these ceremonies. In the Western forms of intercommunication with spirits, we have this demonstrational factor, and that comes, of course, because of the non-belief of the Western sitters in regards to spirits, in regards to spiritual things, basically. So the spirits, for the first time, have to demonstrate that they are real, actually, and um, the self-explaining um, or healing cannot so naturally stand in the focus of everything like in these indigenous ceremonies. Yes, because in the indigenous ceremonies you do not need to demonstrate to nobody that spirits are existing.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
so you first have to um, persuade the sitters that this is actually happening, and then these healing energies do emerge, and they do emerge even if even the word healing is not even mentioned. They do happening, and we had spontaneous healings in our seances of smaller and huger grades. So this is very important, I believe. The energies have a strong healing momentum, and this is part of the power um, that is emerging from that work.
That's incredible. Well, thank you so much for being the conduit to go in between those two worlds and bring us all of these wonderful, wonderful things. Hope, I really hope that I get to experience one of your circles someday. That would be fantastic.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I hope that also.
Yes. And thank you so much for being generous with your time. And if you would like to tell the listeners where they might follow your work.
Oh, yes, I would love to. We are on Facebook, and this is Kai Muegge, my name, Muegge, and the first name Kai is actually Kai. Yes, it's a Nordic name. Kai, it is called. And the second name is called Muegge, Muegge. But under the term Felix Circle. The name Felix and Circle, you find us as well. And we have a blog where you find all the materials about us, but not only about us, a lot of things about the history of physical mediumship. And usually we needed to talk about a lot more things and aspects of the history of physical mediumship and the bizarre characteristics that sometimes come up in that work, and why are they so bizarre? Maybe we have someone else the opportunity to talk about that as well. So Facebook and this blog thing you both find under Felix Circle.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much. And
thank you too.
Yeah. And let's do it again. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I'm there.
Well, that was a very, very enjoyable conversation. I found Kai to be a very warm, gentle, and kind person. And I look forward to talking again. I think we're going to set something up soon in the near future because there's so much ground to cover as far as all of the topics that we were talking about. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank you for making it through my first episode. Hopefully, I did a good job, and it did the subject matter and the subject justice. I would also like to take this opportunity to suggest that you become a Patreon subscriber. If you like what you heard today, and you think that this show has some potential, becoming a Patreon subscriber would be a huge help. Even for as low as $1 a month, just knowing that would be coming in on a monthly basis would really, really help to serve to make The Melt a much better show, which I hope to do in many, many ways, to flesh it out in ways where I can cover more ground, and my field of activity is much, much bigger. So you can go to www.patreon.com/themeltpodcast. You can find my Patreon page there. There are many different levels to pledge at, from $1 on up. Of course, anything that you decide to contribute would be a huge help and would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. You can always find this podcast at www.themeltpodcast.com. And you can always reach me at themeltpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send your recorded stories or experiences or recounts of any engagement you might have had with things outside of the spectrum of consensus reality. Open to hearing all of it. So please send it to that email address, drop a few words off and let me know what I should do with this, or maybe what the backstory is, and I will do my best to get it up. I want to not only include interviews like you just heard today, but also accounts of people telling their own stories. All right, until next time.